So, hi once more everyone. My name is Igor Samokis and I will start this bootcamp with one interesting session about learning how to learn. It may look controversial for you why you're here learning IT and hearing about learning, and I would say that nowadays a modern newspaper holds more information that an Asian people get to know in his entire life. And as our bootcamp is about learning new information and a lot of it, we need maybe some interesting tricks and understanding how we may learn and consume that information a bit easier and of course faster and so on. So our session today we call Learning How to Learn. I will end up in approximately 40 minutes, maybe hours, so we will have extra time before lunch, because dedicated time was 2 hours, but it's quite a lot for this topic, and 2 hours is really a lot for speaking. About things I will talk today. First is a Pomodoro timer and how it helps to avoid procrastination, if you have any. Then we will slowly move to focused and diffused mode of thinking, and it's kind of a theory of how memory consumes information and store it in your brain. Then spaced repetition, one technique that helps you learn material better by repeating it through some intervals of time. Then memory palace, very interesting technique which we will actually use to memorize all things in this presentation. And the essence of it is to use very familiar physical location to hook some learning concepts there, like this meeting room or your house or your house hallway. And then interleaving, also quite interesting technique which describes how other topics you're currently learning and doing may help you in finding solution to complicated problem in opposite domain, in opposite things you're doing. Like you learning Russian language or Norwegian language and at the same time C#, and how things may interweave between and help you learning both better. And the last but not least is meaningful association, quite straightforward technique, which the essence of which is to find some physical stuff like door and assign to the door some things you're learning. For example, in testing there is a concept called exploratory testing. By the way, anyone familiar with that? No? Oh, okay. Can you describe?
Yes, when you click and write down what you do on test by trying?
Partly, but overall, like exploratory. What does explore? You may explore the world, yeah? So exploratory testing is like you're getting an application and without knowing anything or just knowing some information that you already know, you start to explore the application and do testing by that. So you firstly try to log in, to enter an invalid credential, some basic stuff. And by that, without any concrete plan of doing that, you explore and do exploratory testing. And why door can be a good candidate for meaningful association is that, for me, doors opens a possibility to explore the world. Yeah? You open a door and go out and explore whatever you want. And exploratory testing is kind of a good candidate for that. So all these things, 6 things, we will take a look more closer right now. By the way, I forgot to ask, anyone knows any of this?
Knowing but use? No.
Which?
Like memory palace.
Okay, super. Can you describe what is memory palace?
You just try to associate things in your mind, like let's say some specific knowledge will become a fridge or a TV set in the room or sofa or whatever.
Physical location and
yeah, everything like virtual or physical location in your mind becomes a storage room for some specific.
Super. Any of you guys? Yeah, focus and diffuse mode of thinking maybe not that spread around. So we will use memory palace, but not as usual memory palace as other people do. And we will use it for memorizing all those six concepts that I described right now. And we will use kind of tricky memory palace. Instead of physical location, we will use very familiar physical device, which is a bicycle, and just memorize this bicycle. So we will get to it a bit in a few minutes. And let's imagine you're riding a bicycle and got a tire puncture, and your tire got flat, and it's kind of unpleasant feeling when you get that. And yeah, just memorize this concept. So let's start with procrastination and Pomodoro timer. When you look at something you rather not to do at the moment, for example, some ticket from university or writing a diploma, you may have feel that, uncomfortable feeling in your brain saying, this is no way I'm going to start this. I want to go to a party or want to open Facebook or anything. And when you have that stressful, unhappy feeling, when you look at your task, what is happening actually is that part of your brain called insula works as a physical pain source and really behaves as you feel a physical pain. And as a result, you wanted to switch to some more pleasurable task. In my case, it can be a zombie tube or Facebook or whatever. And as a result of that, you feel happy, of course. But the problem is that happiness is just temporary. What researchers have found actually is that those unhappy feelings are literally disappears just after a few minutes you start to work on a real task. And I may say you exactly how it happens with me. So before I was postponing a lot of my task for tomorrow, I didn't want to do a lot, and when I had any Jira ticket that didn't look very interesting for me, I was trying to postpone it, because it's really not that happy to start to work on some testing or coding at that particular time. But what I found is that after just starting to work on the ticket, after a few or 3 minutes, those unhappy feelings, those physical pain disappears, and I'm focusing on the task. And one thing that can really help on doing that is a Pomodoro timer, or any timer you have on your hand. Anyone knows what is Pomodoro timer and Pomodoro technique or something like that? So Pomodoro timer is a simple time timer which you can okay, let's imagine a device like this. There is 3 buttons. Each of these buttons activate a time timer for 25, 15 or 5 minutes. And when, let's say, I want to focus on a real task, what I'm doing is I'm pressing button for 25 minutes. I see that the time start to slowly count down, and I understand that now I'm focusing just 25 minutes on this task. It's not that much. Moreover, I'm promising myself after it finished to spend 15 or 5 minutes on something that is really pleasurable for me. It can be zombie tube, it can be YouTube, it can be whatever, Facebook or cats like. And what this simple button did is it literally saves my willpower on pushing myself to start doing that work. And the very first minutes of working is very, very crucial, because after that, what different researchers, scientists found is that it's really just a matter of minutes. Then your brain starts to slowly focusing on the ticket and go on and go on. You may have remember this when you will start writing your diploma if you didn't yet, because I remember myself when I started to write diploma. at the very beginning, when you have zero words, 0 pages of that, you're really stressed out, and you think that you will never end up with 100 pages or whatever in months or 2. But the thing is that slowly, 25 minutes in a day or 2 times 25 minutes in a day, you start doing progress, and this 25 minutes you really can write 1 page and another page, and it will eventually work out. So Pomodoro timer is work like that. You have that unhappy feeling, like I had a task to extend all automated tests to our production environment. It was quite an unhappy task for me, because I knew we have a lot of auto-test. I knew we need to extend a lot of it, and in production it's quite messy. I need to create test data. Really not that happy task to do. But what, instead of procrastinating, instead of postponing the task, I did is I just started a timer for 25 minutes and focusing on the task, whatever it is. The very, I would say, crucial thing here is not to focus on the goal of the task, because when you will start to think about a completion of the task, you will may have fall back into stressful feelings that maybe 25 minutes is not enough to finish, and I need to finish it faster, and so on and so on. And then you understand, whatever happens, I will not finish it in the 25 minutes. Let's just go back to Facebook instead of doing that work. So do not think about, the very last day of your sending your diploma, for example, but just on writing right now and right here. Yeah, actually this device called AirDoro, it's my invention, so a little bit of advertisement here. And I created it for myself, for my needs, when I was procrastinating. I understand that I found Pomodoro, it helped me a lot, and I understand that I can create my Pomodoro itself, and I created a simple device basically, and put a few air quality sensors here. For example, CO2 level, and right now in this meeting room it's around 750 particles per million for CO2, and it is considered as normal because outside is 400. So maybe our ventilation here is quite effective, but we'll see what we will end up in an hour. So yeah, I've created my own timer and still using it for 2 purposes: avoiding my procrastination and monitoring CO2 level for better productivity at work, and a few comments about Pomodoro time. So very often 25 minutes is not enough to finish task, and also often I feel myself when timer ends that I really into that deep of the task that I need to continue, and I want to continue. Like, I already consumed a lot of information, and I know that somewhere close there is a solution for a problem I'm solving, and instead of going to a break after timer ends, you may continue. Usually I do another 15 minutes or 25 minutes. For me, like 15 minutes total of focused work is quite exhaustive, and after that I really need to have a rest. Then dopamine. Really interesting stuff is that when you kind of promising yourself a reward after you finished 25 minutes iteration, let's say, and you've got for a coffee or for a chocolate with a coffee, it really serves as a joyful and pleasurable moment, and your brain may release a bit of dopamine, and you may have feel a bit better and happier after. And it's happened for me really every day, at least once. When I finished one of my Pomodoro timer for, let's say, self-education, I feel energized, and I feel more motivation to learn after I understand that each day I really consistently learn something new. Also, it's quite important, of course, to avoid all external disturbance, as phones, notification on your laptop or any computer you have. What I did is I simply turn off all notifications that is possible on my Windows device, and as the same I did on the phone. Very often I put my phone into shelf near my working place. The last but not least, if you don't control time slots, Pomodoro is not working. For example, if you will go here in this room with Pomodoro device started, and after 25 minutes end you will proclaim that my Pomodoro ends, I will go out. It may work out, but in most of the cases it's not like that. Anyone knows what is grooming? No? Everyone know? You don't know what is Scrum. You will have it in some. Yeah, Nona may teach you. So I think you will know what is grooming. And grooming basically is a meeting where all project team collaborate together. It sits in one room or in one call and discuss tickets they need to do in the next iteration of development of a software. And this means that you're not in control of a time in that meeting. It's just everyone there. And for example, right now in my project, we have a grooming where I am absent because I'm here with you. And we have usually 1.5 to 2 hours of talking. And yeah, Pomodoro timer really don't work in that way. For me, just for personal needs. Super, let's end up this session with one simple question. What is the right way of using Pomodoro to fight procrastination? So set up a timer, no interruption, focus and get reward. Set up a timer, check all notifications, focus, repeat. Set up a timer, go make a coffee, reward, repeat.
Okay.
I'm a fan of last one.
Well, yeah, this last one sounds good, but...
So A, okay.
A.
A.
A. A.
A.
Yeah.
Also? I think it's because you the first who told A, anyone other just agreed with it. Yeah, you're right actually, it's quite obvious and good that you understand. Just start the timer, no interruption, and focus, and of course get a bit of dopamine by consuming chocolates or whatever makes you happy. So let's back to our bicycle. Do you remember I showed you tire puncture? And why I want you to create analogy with this bicycle and tire puncture is that when you got it, for example, you're riding bike, you have a trouble with your tire, it is unhappy feeling that you got it. Yeah, you feel unhappy, but since you start to fixing the tire, you will eventually fix the tire, and you will eventually be happy and riding back on your bike. So this analogy, I wanted you create association with bicycle and tire puncture with Pomodoro timer for fighting procrastination. Yes, let's do that. You don't need laptop, so you may leave it as it is, just a bit of movement. You will have plenty of time. Once I did it in a quite big conference. I'm presenting this presentation not only for you, but before I've been at 2 or 3 conferences. I was in Poland, I think, and this slide showed up and people were looking like, seriously? No one did that because I didn't push them, but I understand if you really stand silently and saying, okay, let's do some movement. It's just for making our blood going a bit faster in our body. So yeah, second thing that I want to speak is focused and diffused mode of thinking. And just remember association, you riding on this bike very fast. So far, it's the only thing you need to know. Yep, focused and diffused mode of thinking. So to understand this concept, focused and diffused mode of thinking, a bit better, we need to dig into how memory works. It will be very brief diving. Afterwards, I will explain focused and diffuse mode of thinking. So there is a two fundamental type of working memory. It is working memory, which located in prefrontal cortex in your brain, and long-term memory, which basically located in all other parts of your memory. And back in 1956, George Miller made an experiment. So he showed a piece of paper with seven circles. It was 7 or more. Yeah, I think with circles. Yeah, it was just a bunch of circles. And he showed that piece of paper for just a quarter of a second to a different person. And what he eventually understand is that person did fine when they saw just 7 circles on a paper, not more, not much. So they remember that there was 7 of them. And what Miller suggests is that human working memory, that is the capacity to hold information at this point of time, is roughly limited to 7 units. But actually, newest researchers show that this capacity is roughly limited to 4 working units. I really like the analogy of Dr. Barbara Oakley, which showed she showed this analogy of octopus and working in long-term memory in one of her famous course, Learning How to Learn. Maybe someone already made it. So the analogy is that imagine octopus and octopus 4 tentacles, and these tentacles is your basically working memory units, and these tentacles may connect with long-term memory, and long-term memory, of course, a place of memory where we store all those, backup of our information, like database. And if we wanted to extract, let's say I'm learning Latvian language, and I wanted to extract some word like izlietos or izlietnie, it's like hand washers, moika, I know.
Sink.
Yeah, sink. Right now I was trying to put my octopus tentacle into my long-term memory and hook that information that's stored in long-term memory. And the thing is that our working memory is limited to these 4 working units, yeah. And the problem is that to consume and to work with more complex information, we need to somehow master not just extracting one word, but to extracting some complex information. And how we can do that is to create the chunks. Why? A little bit back. So 4 working units is quite limited number, yeah, and it looks like a bottleneck of our memory itself. We're limited to only 4 units, while long-term memory holds enormous amount of information. So how we can master and overcome this bottleneck is to create so-called chunks. Basically, chunks is a piece of information which are very complicated. Instead of just one word, they can hold entire sentence or entire language. In programming, it may be that before you start to learn programming, you understand just the concept of integer variable or something like that. But after that, you are starting to understand objects, you're starting to understand different stuff. And this is kind of a chunk which is very complicated piece of information. And by just having 4 working memory units, you can still dig into 4 things into long-term memory, but those 4 things will be, of course, complex and will help you solve complex information. So why I'm telling you that? Once, I think, when I was preparing this presentation, in parallel, I was trying to solve one problem for test automation. and the problem was in very complex data transfer object. We will maybe look into that in a few days. And the problem was in dynamic JSON key. I remember from morning stand-up till the lunchtime, I was focusing on that problem, and I didn't eventually end up with solution. I asked my colleagues, I asked Google, and I was overwhelmed with new information, with new things, but still I stuck with the problem. You may have said that I need to push myself and did more 2 or 3 hours of Googling, and maybe I will find out the solution. But what I did instead is I went to our physiotherapy. What is physiotherapy is basically a physical activity when you can barely think about anything except muscle pain. So at that moment, our brain turned on into different mode of thinking, which called diffused mode of thinking. And really, you don't think about anything in particular about that problem, and your brain start to figure out some stuff by himself, like work in background or in foreground. And after 30 minutes of that pain, I was really very happy to get back to my desk, sit in front of my PC, and I was full of enthusiasm, and my brain was just opened. I just felt that I can consume some more. I looked into problem once more, understand that maybe at this step it can be something different. I googled a bit more and found that I need to use just a dictionary object for that dynamic JSON key, and it worked like a charm. So focused on a problem. When you understand that you're kind of stuck with the problem, the best way to help yourself is to do a physical activity or an activity opposite to what you was doing with that problem. For case with IT, it's of course physical activity. Rather, it can be a physiotherapy or any gym, bicycling or running. And this is actually a picture of Poland testing conference where people playing football, and I actually did play with them as well. But I step over to take this photo. And why I'm saying you that is that testing conference is also all about learning. People go in there, and in 2 days they go to different sessions, learn a lot of information. And this happened until lunchtime, and I played with them just with only one reason. I wanted to get rid of all my minds about testing, about all the stuff people were telling that, just to get rid of that mind and to push my brain into foreground mode, so he will figure out some stuff by himself. And this is one activity that you may also use, but probably not at work. To end up this session, let's have another question. When you're stuck with finding a solution to some complicated problem, what are the best ways to help yourself? So bash your head into a wall in 90-degree position, relax and do opposite activity to what you've done while solving the problem, go home and sleep, or use your gym membership. Anyone want to select one?
Or 2?
It sounds
fun.
2 and the 4.
It's multi-choice question. 2 and 4. Okay. Anyone 2, 3, 4?
Maybe you all can help.
Yeah, I don't want to test the first one. I'm a test engineer, but not that crazy test engineer. Sorry, guys. I will not, but yeah, I will not. Yes. So that's the very first one. Will most probably will not. I didn't test it myself, but I don't think it will help. No one told me before that it helped him solve a problem. So relaxing, do opposite activity to what you've done. Actually, I didn't mention, but sleeping is also that kind of activity that turn your brain into diffuse mode of thinking for quite a while, like 7+ hours. And actually, I heard at one course of science of well-being, and people told that this undersleeping and how it's called when you sleep kind of 4 or 5 hours in a long period of time, which may have happened with students frequently, is really bad stuff. I don't think I open your eyes for that, but take care of sleep while doing bootcamp as well, because it will be a bit overwhelming and hard to learn each day, and there is some guys who wanted to give you homework, so yeah, have a good sleep is good stuff. And also membership in gym, use it. So imagine yourself riding a bike very hard. Is that hard that you cannot think about anything about really riding that and muscle pain? And at that time, you turn your brain into so-called diffused mode of thinking. You just don't think about problems or your work or other stuff in university. And yeah, your brain may figure out some stuff, may figure out some solution to complicated problem you're trying to solve. And I want to use this analogy, you riding this bicycle, as an analogy for diffused and focused mode of thinking. Clear? Super. Any questions so far?
No.
Good. The next 4 techniques will be, I will make them shortly, so don't worry, you will not be stressful. Just another 20 minutes and maybe where we'll end up. So the next 4 technique I wanted to speak is spaced repetition, memory palace, interleaving, and meaningful association. Spaced repetition. So it's clear that if you will, repeat information through time, that information will stack, will stuck in your brain. Very good. And it's also clear if you will try to do the same repetition in just one day, that info will not last that long as if you will do it just in 1 week. And from science point of view, our information or things we learned is a connection between neurons, and that connection may be weak, may be average, and may be strong. And to train that connection, we need to revisit information we're learning in some time period. For example, when I was preparing for this presentation, I was making a third task in a parallel instead of work and preparing this presentation. I was preparing for ESTQB certification. It's kind of an exam where you need to answer different questions about testing, and then you will get a certificate for that. So what I did is I learned each day, and I repeat learned information every day, and I did it in some kind of pattern. This pattern for me is that one. I repeat, actually this is a notes of my learning sessions. So I repeat within the same day of learning. It's actually very crucial, repeat directly after you learn something. I may give you an example not from IT or testing world. So around 2 years ago, I was passionate dancing, especially social dancing, salsa and kizomba. And I remember that after dance classes, when they end, if I will repeat the same movements we learned directly after classes ends, just for another 10 minutes, after 2 days, after next learning session, I realized that I really remember that movements much more better, and my movements become even a bit, like robotic or machinery. I just remember that moves with my legs without, consciously think about that. And this is why repeating information within the same day, or even better, directly after you learn it, is crucial for long-term remembering. Of course, after 1 day, after 3 or 5 days, and after 1 month. This pattern actually will make sure that you will remember information you learn really in long-term perspective. Yep. So let's back to our bicycle. Here is a bottle. I hope there is something tasty in that bottle. And I wanted to repeat some tasty drinks from time to time, like Coca-Cola, every day or at least once per week. So repeating drinking some very tasty drink is a good analogy for our spaced repetition technique, because we wanted to repeat information from time to time. So this is an analogy we will use for that. Yep, memory palace. Very interesting technique. So this is a photo of my flat hallway. And I remember this room very good. I do not need to learn or dig into my mind to put into my brain all those things that are in my hallway. And once more I was preparing to use TQB certificate, and there is one test technique called defect and experience-based test techniques, which consist of four techniques. And what I did is that I associate those things I was learning with some physical stuff in my hallway. The first I looked into is shelves. On shelves, people usually put and classify things. So I assigned defect taxonomy technique. Defect taxonomy is about classifying defects and making some assumption based on in which clusters of application there is more defects and no. So I assigned shelves to defect taxonomy. Then I looked at key hooks. And key hooks remind me of check marks. So I assigned a checkbox testing as another type of defect and experience-based technique for key hooks. Then here is my electric scooter, which you may have heard about, that I'm very afraid to broke. So this scooter used to have some problems with electronics. So what I did is that I assigned error guessing, another test technique, to electric scooter, because I knew it used to have problems with electronics before. And of course doors. I already mentioned doors, that when it opened, it gives you a possibility to explore the world. And there is another test technique called exploratory testing, which I associate with doors. So this simple technique we will associate with bags on a bicycle trunk. And how I wanted you to do that is imagine all of us as a very little tiny creatures inside that bag. And from that perspective, that bag will look like a really big place, like almost like a palace, really. And memory palace we will associate with bag. Interleaving. Quite straightforward technique is that when you learn new sport, or for example learn how to play piano and learn J meter or C sharp or programming, it's not what this is what your brain wants to do. It wants to interleave, to mix your learning, and not to learn 3 months new sports and 3 months piano, or let's say 1 year new sport, one year piano, because you can end up in a situation when some things from learning J meter or C sharp can help you with learning new sport or with playing a piano. For example, you may start to learn C sharp and electronics, coding and electronics like Arduino stuff, and then you're starting to play piano and understand that I can use that knowledge from building some sound recognizing device which will blink with some LEDs and help me in playing piano, and really you combine information, you combine learning, and interleaving is actually a technique which says that mixing learning stuff is a very good stuff in problem solving. What thing I want you to use for this technique is wheel spokes. This one. I think that wheel spokes is very mixed between each other, very interweaved between each other, and interleaving as a technique for mixing learning stuff. I think it's a good analogy for that. Yep, and meaningful association. Having some very meaningful, taking some physical stuff like a door and associate it with something you wanted to learn. And one interesting stuff is that putting yourself into association you wanted to create actually helps you memorize that material better. So if you will imagine yourself looking into the binocle on that door, you may remember that information better. So this is our bicycle, and we end up with 6 techniques for helping learning better and easier. And I want to challenge any of you or all of you to recall all of those techniques by just looking at this bicycle. Don't be shy, I will help, any other will help as well. We're here only less than 10 people. Yes?
There was the flat tire, that was the timer.
Yes.
And there was a guy on the bicycle that was the I don't remember.
Diffused brain.
Yeah, the diffused brain one. Then there was the bottle, I think.
Okay, what was this bottle? Tasted
Repetition.
drink?
The repetition.
Repetition.
The memory palace was.
Oh, it was space repetition. Okay.
Yeah, the memory palace was the bag.
Yeah.
Then the interleaving was the spokes, and the 6th one.
Yeah, the 6th one we didn't yet assign, and
Yeah.
I leave it to you. So what we can use as the last analogy of meaningful association for bicycle? Any suggestion?
It's the light at the front
Okay, why?
because it illuminates the path like in front,
Yeah, might be good analogy. Any others? Were you agreed with lights? Yes, super. I prepared a different one. I prepared actually set Keanu Reeves on the string for that. It's just my backup. But lights definitely better. So yeah, once more. Tire puncture, unpleasant feeling when you don't want to start a task and procrastinate. Just use a bit of willpower to start some timer, and after a few minutes you will feel focused on a task. Then riding yourself hardly on this bike, pushing yourself into diffused mode of thinking and mixing that with focused mode of thinking. Interleaving for tasty drink from that bottle, whatever inside. Memory palace, back. Interleaving for the wheel spokes, and of course not Keanu Reeves but that light for
Association.
meaningful association. Yep, super. I wanted to say thank you for attention, and I think we will end up now. We will have extra 1 hour, or at least 55 minutes. After that, at 1, I think someone will join you. But let me check once more. Yeah, Yanis, you know. So at 1 o'clock you will have Yanis here. Any questions?
Which techniques do you use?
All of them. I use very frequently Pomodoro. I use almost unconsciously now focused and diffused mode of thinking because I'm trying to do physical activity, some Vingroshana between working time. And today actually we have physiotherapy from 3 to 4. Unfortunately, I don't think you will join because you will have Unona here, but I would recommend you, if you can, to visit it after bootcamp if you will join Visma, because it's a really nice activity. As I showed on that screen, it's like half an hour of stretching and so on. Then interleaving also unconsciously, I'm trying to push myself into self-education each day, and I started to learn, it was testing, then I moved to physics, then to a bit of mathematics, then to electronics, like Arduino and other stuff. There was a few weeks or months of learning business administration with MBA, and there was another different stuff. I really, what I'm passionate about, I'm trying to self-educate, and it works as an interleave, and I'm learning different stuff. Then what else? Meaningful association, of course. Memory palace not that rare, but I know a guy who works in different company as a test engineer who use memory palace, guess for what? So they have a bunch of Jira tickets. Anyone knows what is Jira tickets? Yeah, like tickets, okay, tickets in ticket manager system. They're like a place where all tasks are stored, and then people pick up tasks from that system to start to work. So that guy wanted to memorize all tickets in the system by putting them into Counter-Strike maps. You remember Counter-Strike 1.6 maybe, or someone played. So he knew that map very well, and he assigned in different places Jira tickets, and he easily, navigates through the tickets. It's crazy. Then what else was there? Interleaving, focused and diffused mode of thinking. Yeah, I'm using almost all of them, but some of them is already become a behavior, not a behavior, but I get used to it, and it's like a habit. For example, Pomodoro, it's really a habit for me. Okay, any other questions?
What about muscle memory? Is it a type of long-term memory, or is it something different?
It's an interesting question. I'm not deep into science of a brain, but I know. What do you think?
I don't know. That's why I asked the question.
Because it looks like it's like reflex. It can be like reflex. Like we have some reflex if some object are going to us very, very fast and very close. We are reflexively afraid of that. And I don't think it's any kind of memory. The same with when you touch some heat or cold, it's a reflex. Maybe it's partly with long-term memory connected, but when I recall my dancing, from the beginning when teachers teach you some movement, like 6 movements with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. From the beginning, it really rocket science. You need to 1, 2, 3, where to put that leg, where to put weight on that or that weight. Think about next step, and so on and so on. But after repeating that information, it becomes machinery. You're like a robot, and maybe it goes into that strong long-term memory. And you remember I told you about chunks. So you create so complicated chunk of information, so you need just only one working memory unit to hook information about entire step, instead of using all your 4 working memory units to grab all those pieces of this entire movement. I think it may be closer to this than to reflex. Any other questions? Clear? Super.